People said it's no big deal. There's plenty enough for everyone. But I don't think I'm dreaming. Just looking for a helping hand. People getting hungry, gazing at the fat of the land. This is not no miscommunication from either side. It ain't even Alabama. People getting hungry, gazing at the fat of the land. I was born down the road, looking for a place to land. I'm looking for a home I own. People say that's not in the plan, but I don't think I'm dreaming. Looking for a helping hand. People getting hungry, gazing at the fat of the land. But it's not no miscommunication from either side. And it ain't no simple place to hide. This is not California. At the fat of the land. Sitting in the setting sun, feeling like a heavy load. This is all that we began. This is all that we can hold. But I don't think I'm dreaming. I'm warming now from where I stand. Oh, people getting hungry, gazing at the fat of the land. Oh, but it ain't no miscommunication from either side. Of the land. Frightened of each other. I've not spoken to my mother. Smoke rise up through our hands, clouds across the promised land. She I'd rather be there. Who can breathe so crowded in here? I've not spoken to my mother.
Knockouts. After Like a Heat Wave Burning by John Stammers. The virus puts me under house arrest, and the heat wave punches me in the face. I am a hot succulent, droopy, incarcerated. The cops don't even have to come. My head so tired, it's hard to remember what I was doing or why. My arms and legs juiced up in a dehydrated sort of way. I hear the sound of my sweat as it percolates down my forehead into my clothes. All the bacteria growing so joyously on my skin multiply. I start to dream about tundra and ice floes, mucklucks and dog sleds. I never did love humidity, so the thunderstorms this morning, exciting as they are, leave me in the muggies. All that electricity, and why couldn't I see Zeus in his bowling alley? Being asleep at the time didn't really help. The fire's already starting. I try to embrace the idea this weather will only get hotter and drier. It's not so easy, like a hug that slides away from you, or an internal electric shock that jumpstarts your heart. Speaking of electricity, what about the solar panels I wish were everywhere, like licorice candy on the roof? I think about this today, my mind all welded to the road of our predicaments. Why are we so stuck, and how it could be so late? The virus has us on house arrest, and the rest of the mess just melts all over.
Beautiful. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Phyllis Klein. Phyllis's work has appeared in numerous journals and anthologies. She was a finalist in the Sweet Poetry Contest 2017, the Carolyn Forche Humanitarian Poetry Contest in 2019, the Fisher Prize in 2019. She's on a roll. She has a new book that I'm going to show here called Full Moon Herald. We're going to get to talk about today. It's a poetic newspaper. It's published by Grayson's Books. She sees writing as an artistic dialogue between author and readers, an intimate relationship building process that fosters healing on many levels. Welcome, Phyllis Klein, to the Lo-Fi Lounge.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
It was such a nice opener to get it's so many topics all at the head in that heat wave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Tell me about how you decided to structure your new book of poems as a newspaper. What brought you to that thought?
Well, I was trying to figure out how to organize the book, which is kind of an interesting part of putting a book of poems together. And actually, my partner and I, Len, were thinking about, talking about what would be a good way to do it. And since it was about the news, I had the idea, well, why don't I make it like a newspaper? And then I had this, bad idea that I would have poetic titles, and actually Len said, well, why don't you just make it like a newspaper? So I tried that out, and it just worked. So that's how it got started.
It is. It's such a nice, auspicious way of launching so many different ideas. And just as any typical newspaper, you open this up, and there's all these different worlds, but they're compartmentalized. Mm-hmm. And so what are some of the chapters that you have in your newspaper?
So I have international news, national news, arts and entertainment, which we're going to be talking about tonight. I have obituary, I have travel, I have book review, and more. And the only one that didn't make it, actually, that got cut at the cutting room floor was the sports section. So that I still have those poems, but they're not in the book.
So was that an editor's decision, or was that just said this we're not rolling with this?
She just said, I don't like it.
Yes,
there you go.
The cold, hard world of publishing.
Well, she's really wonderful, and she's very wise. So I took her advice.
Your advice. Well, but it's a very complete thought, and what I enjoyed. I heard you on a podcast, Poetry Spoken Here, with Charlie Rossiter, and it just the notion of a newspaper, it caught my interest to say, well, how is this going to work out? And the poems go from, you read a very dark, very desperate poem at the beginning, and then it moved to this poem about a man who plays the piano for elephants, and I said, boy, what a segue, number one. But all these things could appear in a newspaper. Did the poem about the elephants, did you see it in a newspaper first?
Oh, absolutely. All of it, yeah. So the only thing I didn't see in the newspaper were the personal ones. And what I decided was that it was my book, and so if I wanted to put in some of my news stories, my personal stories, then they would go in there as well. So, but all the news stories are pretty much out of the newspaper.
So do you want to start? Do we want to do the elephant story first? The elephant.
Oh yeah, for sure. So Paul Barton is he's a concert pianist, and he lives in Thailand now. He's married to a Thai woman, and one of the things he decided to do, I don't really know how he came to the idea, but he felt that there are some elephant sanctuaries in Thailand for abused elephants, and so he felt that he wanted to apologize to the animals.
Yeah.
And so he figured out a way to put his piano on wheels. I don't know how he gets it there. Maybe they keep it there now, but and they wheel it around onto the grass and dirt, and the elephants roam free. And he sits down at the piano and plays, and they come to the piano, and then they actually, if you watch the video, they actually start swaying to the music. So it's just quite breathtaking and very touching and poignant. So, so I was drawn to write a poem about it that I call Paul Barton Plays Piano for Elephants. The piano, fountainhead to a congregation of sick, abused, retired elephants. A man's hands skim the keys. Animals stop, listen, flap ears, reach trunks around to sniff aura of the instrument, aspect of the man. Elephants straggling about, free now, shielded. The piano sitting on the dirt in a park, surrounded. Picture it, man playing Bach to a creature large enough to kill him, stomp up his keyboard. The elephant stands transfixed. The man gives bananas at first to make a good impression. It helps them memorize his smell, connect him to the sounds. He walks with a group sometimes, the blind ones. Even if they knew where the piano once got its keys, what would they do? Crush it? This cruel, splendid coincidence, this moonlight sonata under the stars, these behemoths swaying.
I love that poem. And there's just this swaying and just your language.
It's
It sways with the ears of the elephant. And the poem takes this soft movement. It is very sonata-like. So when you were writing it, did you kind of go back and hear the music of it again, or is that just part of being a poet?
That's a really good question. I think no, I definitely think I was listening, hearing the music, and I watched the videos, and I was just so touched. And I think, as we're talking about it, I don't think I've realized this before, but this is a book that has a lot of trauma in it. A lot of terrible things that have been happening in the world. We all experience trauma in our lives. I happen to be a therapist who works with trauma, so there's something about the fact that the elephants were abused. I think that's where that idea came to me about, if you've been hurt, and and then there's sort of a symbol of that hurt in the piano, and yet this was all about love, and it kind of just, it felt to me like there was so much healing in that.
It's the poster child of your healing poems to me, as I was looking through it, is that it because it, so I think it explains your philosophy that you're saying.
Wow.
That in this expression of poems, in the expression of this art, there is this opportunity for healing. It's not guaranteed. And sometimes healing has to come from some joyous celebration, and sometimes healing has to come from, tapping into these darker times to find yourself in that darkness. And it has both of those elements that are sitting, and probably one of the shortest poems in your book. And I
Mhm.
think there's a wonderful economy to it. And we're
Mm.
experiencing this redemption for the elephants, but we're in there too. We're part of that DNA also.
Mhm. Oh, I think that Paul Barton is our he's the symbol of what we need to be doing. You know, we all need to be showing compassion for for those who have been hurt,
Yeah.
um, and that that doesn't always happen.
But if you haven't listened to Self Portrait, or you just dabbled in it, the difference of the Spotify era and whatnot, in the challenge of just kind of song cherry picking and moving through so quickly is, I love albums because you have a chance to pause.
Hmm.
And if you have an angry album, you can get angry with it. And
Right.
if you have a sad album, you can grow over the size of the album to be
Hmm.
sad with. And it doesn't have to just be vinyl, but just stick with a piece of music, because artists thought about that as as not just a bunch of songs thrown together.
Yeah.
Even this potpourri hodgepodge of an album has a philosophy in it
Hmm.
that I
It's meant to
think,
challenge you.
yeah, and it also, I
Hmm.
think it's meant to kind of soothe you a little bit. A kind of challenging guy here in the front is also this guy who's in the back who says,
Balanced, right.
I'm tired of people going through my trash cans, but this
Yeah.
is what
Yeah.
I'm going to move forward. These, so there's a bit of a retreat in this music,
Sure.
and
Lazy retreat.
lazy
Sure.
retreat.
Right.
And we might be in the mood for a lazy retreat right
Hmm.
now. We
Yeah.
could be, uh, and or just trying to reset ourselves or take stock of this. So the more I thought about this album over this
Yeah.
last week,
Hmm.
I just started to like it more and more. And
Yeah.
I go,
What else do you like from
oh,
like,
I just like this cover of "Let It Be Me."
that's a good
I
one.
just loved it because he sings. He's got his kind of crooner self in there.
Yeah.
And it's just a beautiful song. In the old days, the Dangers we used to play that song, and it's like you were asking before we started. We start in the middle of this punk era. How do we fit in there? Well, eventually, all the punk bands kind of dug the Dangers because we were so unreservedly kind of a '60s feel,
Sure.
and true to ourselves. But I remember being in practice, and John and I just singing "Let It Be Me," or just
And you knew that
harmonizing.
song too, so
Yeah,
it wasn't like you brought it in and people were like, "What? What's going on here?"
yeah. This music came from my roots as a kid. I loved the
Hmm.
Everly Brothers, and I loved harmonies,
Hmm.
and so that when he sings that song, he's kind of walking his way through his roots. So as scary as this face can be,
Yes.
don't be
We have to
haunted.
learn to love it, right?
Yeah, don't be haunted
Okay.
by the thing.
Okay, I'll put it up. Maybe if I have it up for a while, this condition me. This is I brought this one. Bob Dylan by Guerrero Marcus, writings 68 to 2010. And this is a fun book because he's not like, like some critics just fawn over Dylan or whatever, and he's very critical, but you can tell there's a lot of love there. I mean, so it's kind of funny, and he does it. This album especially, his take on this album is he kind of goes through every song. The first thing he says is number one, what is this shit? Number two, or sung by female chorus, All the Tired Horses is a gorgeous piece of music, perhaps the most memorable song on this album.
Oh.
So it wasn't as, like, reading it again, it wasn't as disparaging as I remembered it, because he does say a lot of good things in here about the songs. But then he also just says, so, this song is just horrible. Like, he just says, this is terrible. I don't know why, But again, it's just a good kind of book to have, a nice coffee table book, because he goes through pretty much all those eras and discusses them at length. So I think we've talked it out enough.
Yeah.
I'm going to learn to love the cover. I already love the music, but sometimes the covers of the that gets you, especially when it's of this size. But we'll see.
Yeah, they should just make a just real big one, shrunken head, real size.
Absolutely, get a T-shirt, walk around with a T-shirt of this, and
You'll be everyone's friend.
Right.
You'll be pulled
That'll
over.
be true social distancing, won't it? I got my mask on, and then I have a shirt of this. You'll be staying 12 feet away from me. So, right? Well, we'll see you next week or next time. We'll be doing something completely different, of course, because we have a lot to pick from. But thank you for joining us. Once again, I'm Ryan Harsh.
And I'm Chris Leroy.
And thanks for joining us for Dylan Box. Bye, everyone.
Get you a copper kettle. Get you a copper coil. Fill it with new made corn mash, and nevermore will you toil. You'll just lay there by the junipers while the moon is bright. Watch those jugs a filling in the pale moonlight. Build you a fire with hickory ash and oak. Don't use no green, no rotten wood. It'll get you by the smoke. You'll just lay there by the juniper while the moon is bright. Watch those jugs a filling in the pale moonlight. My daddy, he made whiskey. His granddad, he did too. And we ain't paid no whiskey tax since 1792. We just lay there by the junipers while the moon is bright, and watch those jugs a filling in the pale moonlight, in the pale
In June of 1965, Inland Empire musician Jim Messina was about to graduate from Colton High School and enter the next phase of his music career. But he had been laying the groundwork for his move to the 1960s LA music scene for years. His most successful Inland Empire group, the Jesters, had built up a local reputation and found itself in a position to release an album. The Dragsters was released in late 1964 on the small Audio Fidelity label. During its recording, Messina made some important connections that, in the future, would allow him to get his foot in the door of the music business. After he graduated from Colton High, he dissolved the group, quit performing, and decided to educate himself in the technical aspects of the recording industry. He began working with Ibis Records that did their sessions at Emperor Studios. It was there that he met recording engineer Mike Doro and began an apprenticeship with him to learn about sound engineering. Doro eventually introduced Messina to people at the iconic Sunset Sound Recorder Studios, where he was eventually hired as a mixing engineer. He was still a teenager. In 1966, Messina's work at Sunset Sound would lead to him being asked to engineer Buffalo Springfield's second LP. The group, with lead singers Stephen Stills, Richie Furay, and Neil Young, was eager to build upon the momentum initiated by their first album. On the back cover of the album, over 85 musical luminaries were thanked by the band. Among those acknowledged was Jim Messina, recognized for his contribution to the recording of the LP. When Jim Messina was asked about how he met Buffalo Springfield, he said, "Neil was the first one of the group that I met. He came into Sunset Sound one day, booked some time, and listened to what I was doing. Evidently, he wanted to work with somebody his own age. A few days later, I met Stephen, Richie, and the rest of the guys. I didn't contribute as to what their musical ideas would be, but I was their technical advisor at their request as to how a particular thing should be done." Upon release, the album produced 3 singles that cracked the Billboard Hot 100 chart. However, by mid-1967, the members of Buffalo Springfield seemed to be headed in different directions, lacking cohesion and headed towards a breakup. Messina was once again asked to engineer the sessions for the band's third album. Eventually, Atlantic Records chief Ahmet Ertegun and the band asked him to take over as producer. In January 1968, band bass player Bruce Palmer was deported to Canada after being charged with drug possession for the second time, adding further drama to the Buffalo Springfield saga. Jim Messina was in the right place at the right time, and the group asked him to join the band and take over on bass from Palmer. He joined even though he was in the difficult position of producing the band's third and final album. Messina had to piece together an LP from leftover 1967 studio sessions. He was only 20 years old. But before Messina could devote his full time to the LP, there were tour obligations to fulfill. In early 1968, the band was on the road for most of February. They took a bit of a break in March, then spent all of April on tour with the Beach Boys and the Strawberry Alarm Clock. Having decided to break up the band, Buffalo Springfield played a farewell concert at the Long Beach Arena on May 5, 1968. With the band's touring days coming to an end, Messina could now devote his full time to producing their third and final album, Last Time Around, which was released in July 1968. While the album did not produce any hit singles, Jim Messina managed to produce the Buffalo Springfield record that turned out to be their highest-ranking LP on the Billboard album chart. With the end of Buffalo Springfield, drummer Dewey Martin took a group on the road called the New Buffalo Springfield, until Young and Stills took legal action to prevent him from using the Springfield name. Stephen Stills teamed up with David Crosby and Graham Nash to form Crosby, Stills and Nash. Neil Young departed to begin a solo career. This left Jim Messina and Richie Furay, who decided to collaborate on their next music project. The next part documents Jim Messina's journey from Springfield to superstardom.
water began. It's a bandit, get it on. You can't stand it. Out of the feeling like a dog in the rain. Said to the big hot river in the fast water began. Let it run out, if you hand it, let it run out. That's that again, but to the big hot river, to the big hot river, to the big hot river. Of my memory, someone took my memory clear. Said to the big hot river, never gonna come back again. You better run out, you better run out. I can't stand it. You better run out, you better run out. To the big hot river, to the big hot river, to the big hot river. Where the alligators grow. Little girl who I swear to the world makes the alligators look tame. Don't sell it, Eddie. Yeah, got you ready. Everybody said it was a shame. Mama wasn't working on a tank. Yeah, Daddy was lazy, no account. A bad pack. All the brothers a good ball. I can slide a balance out of my truck sack. Don't sell it, Eddie. Yeah, I got you ready. Everybody said it was a shame. Mama was working on a train. Gets up and she tries to sell a CD. And there's no, it's a dinner blood. That's the name of that CD.
You better buy a CD. That's all I'm saying.
She's gonna come after your ass if you don't buy a CD.
Don't be acting like it's some like brain surgery or nothing. You know there's so much awful music out there. You know you have the power to take some good music home with you. And all you gotta do is spend $10 to do it. They are constantly throwing bad music at you every day. You turn on the radio, you turn on the TV, you think some corporation ain't behind that? I'm not getting political. I'm just trying to tell you. I'm trying to help you out. You need this. Go home with this. Take it with you. It's a gift. It's a gift.
gets worse when we do, 'cause we tend to drown it all like young Americans do. Let's go, let's rock and roll. Let's stay until there's no one there. Let's jump, let's fight, let's kiss at night. Live like we just don't care. We had it once, but we just let it go. All good things. You could say that we've both been wrong. That's just the civilized way. Would that be too easy for you? I was up with a picture of us, the kind that hurts when it smiles, the kind you just put away like young Americans do. Well, let's go, let's rock and roll. Let's stay until there's no one there. Let's jump, let's fight, let's kiss at night. Live like we just don't care. Oh, but we just let it go. All good things. Well, some things must go out. Some things must go out. All the good things. Seven times I wrote this song, and 7 times I've been wrong. I can't leave the hard words out.